everyone that comes into your life in this space will touch you in some way. And you'll carry them with you. And the longer you have a relationship with them, obviously, the more you're going to feel attached to them. And it's
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Glam Reaper podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Muldowney, aka the Glam Reaper herself. And on today's episode, I have my gorgeous friend, Lauren Seeley, on with me. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, thank you. It's so nice to be here.
So, Lauren, tell us a little bit, or obviously, I know you quite well, but tell the listeners a little bit about you, your background. You are in multiple different things. So yeah, give us a little rundown on all these different projects.
Well, I guess to start, I'll say that I primarily work around death and disposition, but with grief and loss for humans and for animals. I have worked in disposition aquamation for pets, which is how I got started working with animals and people around loss in that department. And then eventually ended up working, which I currently do now, in a funeral home around loss of humans and helping curate some funerals and personalization for individuals and honoring and telling their story. And I'm also a death educator as well.
Okay. So let's dive into that a little bit. You and I have connected over multiple different things, but I think the big one, because I was personally going through it last year, was pet loss. We lost our dear Poppy, and I'm not going to cry in this podcast because I'm not going to cry. This is one where I'm going to try and hold it together. But yeah, we lost our little puppy Poppy. She was 16 years. She was not a puppy anymore, but she was always a puppy to me last June. And you and I sort of started talking more and more about pet loss, and anybody who knows me or has listened to the podcast knows pet loss has always been a big chunk of sort of my work and trying to, prevent people from judging people. A non-human loss is just as equal as a human loss. And I know there's a lot of people out there who disagree with me on that. But in my realm, a loss is loss, and we should stop sort of pitching each other against each other and having a hierarchy of grief, because there is no such thing, in my opinion. Your own grief is your own grief, and how traumatic it was and is for you is you. So tell us a little bit about your work in pet loss.
Well, mostly my work around pet loss currently is working with people facing the end of life with their pet, usually around a terminal diagnosis. People will seek me out and hire me to be there as a support for them spiritually, to do consulting and planning for end of life, a day of in-home euthanasia appointments, if that's the route that they're going, and then planning something beautiful for the aftercare of their pet in a ceremony and altar space honoring them after. Um, a lot of the work that I do is around grief and consulting with making those decisions for them. Because as we know, someone that is in anticipatory grief is going through a lot already. They're facing the loss of their loved one. And sometimes having somebody step in, validate their feelings, help them make those decisions, find the right doctor, find the right place of disposition and things like that could make a world of difference to them while they're going through that. Then they can focus on their time that they have left with their beloved pets instead of worrying about making all those decisions and phone calls when they're not really wanting to, you know, uh, face those conversations in that moment. Now, I know that some people may see that as being in denial about grief by not being able to make those decisions on their own. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with having somebody step in to help you so that you can enjoy your time if you're able to with your pet as much as you possibly can. And I'm more than happy to do that for people so that I can make the experience a better, more meaningful, lovely ending instead of, as we know, most of the time it doesn't go that way and it can be very stressful.
Yeah, it definitely can. We've been blessed with the two dogs that we had in our family, we were blessed to a certain extent in so far as we got to say our goodbyes, I guess. And in both cases, we had to put our dog, make the choice to put our dogs down. And I even hate that phrase. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just sounds like just such a not nice phrase, but and both were very traumatic moments, and they weren't in our home. And that to me was something that I didn't discover until I came to the US, was that there is veterinaries out there who will actually come to euthanize your pet in your home. um, and I just think that's a lovely gift. Honestly, if we had that available and that option, I would have opted for that back home. But because it's already an uncomfortable enough situation. Your pet is frightened, I'm sure as well. I actually can't even continue talking about it because I know I will start crying. Um, but I just want to talk about sort of the process that all of it, that you go through with everyone. Do you ever, like, how long is your typical relationship with a family?
Oh, it varies greatly. It could be over a year. It
Wow.
could be over a week. I mean, really, it just depends. Because sometimes when you have a terminal diagnosis, you don't know how long that's going to go on. And I've seen pets live far beyond their expectation. And I've seen pets decline really, really quickly. And my goal for them is to, do a discovery call, make sure that we're on the same page of how to work together, and make sure that I'm needed in that way. And then I like to get to work as soon as possible making those plans, because as we know, things are unpredictable, and it could either be, months or to a year, or it could be, days. As generally things go in hospice in general, even with humans, we never really know. So I like to, you know, start moving as soon as possible, because we have no idea. So that's kind of how it goes. And then sometimes a lot of the support that I'm providing is at the end,
Right.
after
So
the pet has passed.
a burning question I have for you, and it's sort of why I've always said I could never really be a death doula or anybody, or even the time I did work in hospice, I found it quite difficult. Is, do you not find with your longer term families, like the ones you have up to a year, that you become attached to the pet or the family?
I definitely do. But I feel a sort of attachment to everyone I work with. I mean, whether or not they're alive or not, it's a lot of the work that I do is having conversations about that, as well as how everyone that comes into your life in this space will touch you in some way. And you'll carry them with you, and the longer you have a relationship with them, obviously the more you're going to feel attached to them. And it's emotional for me too, to be there when they're going through that. I mean, the misconception that we don't feel as much in this field of work is so wrong. We do, and it does affect us, but we also realize how important it is to be in this space if we're able to.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. It's so fascinating how, yeah, like even I've had it said to me that, oh my gosh, I don't know how you work in the funeral space, Jen. You must have a cold heart. And I'm like the biggest smush ball there is going. Like, I cry at
It's true. Yeah.
uh, adverts about hungry children in foreign countries. I'm like a bawling mess. Um, I've often joked that uh, I couldn't work in sort of a children's hospital or one of those sort of dog homes or anything, because I would be like your ones from Bridesmaids with all the puppies in the back. Like, I'd be just taking all the kids home and all the dogs home, and I just become too attached. Um, and even like the families I do work with now, like I stay in touch with them all, but they're not dependent on me, so I can let them go. So I think that's where my calling is. And I do think that everybody in this space has their own specific niche or niche, as you guys would say, where they have their lane, that they're called to kind of do, whether it's embalming, whether it's green burial, whether it's death doulaship, whether it's a celebrant, whether it's a spokesperson, an educator. I do think I think some of us have to wear multiple hats, But I think most people sort of, there's one area that they excel in, and that's, they're where they find their home. You're also a death doula for humans, correct? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, your experience with that?
Yeah, well, this is something that I've actually had to question over the last couple of years myself because, uh, in a way, I've kind of skipped that, and gone straight into disposition, since I've been in this field. And, although I was volunteering with hospice, for the first year and a half, um, I didn't I didn't really have the opportunity to see them through all the way. And so most of my experience as a death doula has been afterwards, mostly working with people around grief and loss. So in that way, I think I definitely have used my death doula skills. I've definitely taken care of loved ones after they pass, cleaning them, things like that. That's something that I do as a death doula, but I have yet to sit vigil with anyone. It's never happened. And so I've struggled with the term death doula ever since I became one because I immediately went into disposition. But I did have a talk with a friend 2 weeks ago, actually, that explained to me there are many, many different ways to be a death doula, and we're not all going to do it the same way. And it doesn't mean that you're not a death doula if you aren't sitting vigil. There are other ways to be a death doula. And for me, also, it's been community building, just resource sharing, death literacy, events, as you know, that I hold and things that I teach online. Just teaching other people to how to have conversations about death and mortality. In that way, I've also used what I know as a death doula to help others.
Yeah. Well, the incredible thing I think about the death doula trend, I kind of call it, is that it's trendy. It's bringing death back into pop culture, which is not never a bad thing. It started, like, even the latest Bridget Jones movie talked about grief and grieving, which I massively applauded. Um, but it's more people are becoming death doulas than they are nearly going into the mortuary space, which is interesting. But it's having people out there talking about it, being the quote unquote death positive, whether you agree with that term or not, is good for us all, because it's just it's pulling back the curtains on a business, and a I mean, people hate that I even call it a business or an industry, but I'm like, it is. That's what it has become. It doesn't have to be that way. There are options open and available to you, but people don't know about that unless there's people out there sharing that word amongst communities. And social media has been great. Like, there's so many people who are, death doulas that are out there sort of talking about the different aspects of funerals and have hundreds of thousands of followers. There are funeral directors doing the same thing who have hundreds of thousands and even a million followers. I've seen a couple of them. And it's just, to me, all of that information being out there is a good thing, because it's just getting people talking and having conversations. And so however we get to that point, I think is a great thing. And, whether, we talked about this in another episode where we're all working in this space for one common goal, and that is to help the bereaved to grieve and grieve well as such, and help the dead have a good death, right? And that's what we're all sort of in this space to do. And whether you're a funeral director and you don't like death doulas, or you don't like celebrants, or whether you're a death doula and you think you are a funeral director, whatever form it is, we still all have a common goal, and we still all need to work together. And I firmly believe there's a seat for everybody at the table, and we just need to start working together instead of against each other. Easier said than done, I know. But we can but try. Yeah, it's a very interesting space, I think.
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely a lot of misconception, and rightfully so, about how the more holistic side versus the more traditional side handle things. And what we're learning is that they can actually work together if that one side listens to the other side, and it's just like anything else, really. I mean, everyone's going to have a preference one way or another, but when you are more green minded, like I have always been, and you work in a funeral space where things aren't always going to be green because you're going to have traditional funerals, there's going to be embalming, things like that, you realize that sometimes certain things are needed for grief to happen, and without getting too much into detail why, just respecting everybody's preference. Of course, the dream is for everyone to have a green funeral or to be acclimated because our planet really, really needs that rest from contaminants. But at the same time, I do see why people choose to go the other route, the more traditional, I guess, route of, funeral practice that we've come to know over the last like 150, 200 years. Um, and so that's been an eye opener for me as well, is just seeing the other side and understanding the other side while still feeling the same way and wanting the same things. Sometimes just having that perspective is a game changer.
Yeah. So tell us, you sort of touched on stuff there, but tell us, how would you have you pre-planned your own funeral? And if you have, what is it? If you haven't, can you give us some details as to what you would like?
Well, I have always said that I wanted a green burial. But and this is always an interesting conversation. I had this conversation last night too at book club. I I think I'm going to be acclimated because I know where I can go that's close by, and my family would like to have my ashes. And so I said, as long as it's green, I'll do it. But just no flame cremation and no fancy stuff. Don't embalm me. Don't do anything like that. I don't want a casket. I don't want a vault. Um and my end of life party, or remembrance, I guess, I would just like to have all my favorite people together, and lots of good food, a good playlist, somebody that can do for me what I do for others, and get all my favorite things together and sort of build a memorial space for me that they feel like embodies who I am. And if they can't do all that, fine, just cremate me. And I had a totally different plan before I got married again, because I just always wanted a green burial. But as far as like everything else, it's pretty simple. I just want to have a party or not have a party, depending on how things go.
I see. And do you have all of this written down?
I do. I do actually. I'd say about 70% of
Good, good. Because we are a fan of a pre-plan on the Glam Reaper podcast. So,
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell other people how important it is to pre-plan if I'm not going to do it myself. There are some things that I still haven't completed, I'll be honest. But it's about 70% completed. So,
good. I know I need to update some of my legal side of it. And that's the thing, you do need to revisit your pre-plan over and over, like every decade, because your friends change, your music tastes change, people in your life change, your situation
yeah.
changes, so it's a lot of things to think about for sure. So what's the future hold for Lauren? What does the next sort of 5 years? What would you like to do?
Uh,
If I could give
oh,
you your
mo um, it's there's so much, really. I mean, it's just this year is so different from last year, and last year was different from the year before. And this year, my focus is really on educating people about the things that I guess I've always been interested in, but that others may find useful. I'm teaching at two different schools currently. And one is teaching about death literacy and pre-planning for LGBTQIA and trans, and why that's so important and how it's different. Just because there's a lot of doulas out there that may not have that exposure to those groups of people. And should they ever have to plan for somebody in the group of queer space, it would be good for them to understand how that might look different. And then I'm also going to be teaching, I actually start next week, around intuitive work in death care spaces and grief spaces. So not something I ever saw myself teaching a class about, but I'm really glad that other people are interested in how they can use their intuitive gifts and energetic um gifts to help people in grief, end of life, and death spaces. So I guess if I saw myself somewhere in the next 5 years and what I'd like to be doing, it would probably be just traveling around and helping people and talking about the things I learn and the tools I gather along the way and sharing them with others. Because at the end of the day, I'm a community doula, and the most important thing to me is to share everything that I'm lucky enough to learn from others with other people.
So teaching seems to be the thing that you're sort of you're feeling.
Yeah, and it's not something I ever thought I would be doing, but here we are, I mean,
There you go. Listen, that's what life is about. So just to wrap things up, I would love to, you touched on it there at the end. You talked about intuitive, sort of in the space, in the funeral space. Have you ever had any intuitive experiences, or like what's the craziest one that you would like to share with us?
all the time, all the time. And this is why I'm teaching a class about it, because somebody recognized this gift in me and said, "Oh my gosh, we should definitely be talking about this, because there's a lot of people I know in this space that have had these experiences, but they're not talking about it. Would you like to talk about it?" And I said, "I will do it. I don't care. I'm not afraid of how that makes me look. I will talk about it." I've always been intuitive, and what I noticed is since getting into the death space 3 years ago, it gets stronger. It gets stronger and stronger and stronger, because the self-care that I have to do around that spiritually is like making me more sensitive. And there's a lot of inner work that needs to be done when you're working in this space, because as we know, it can be very hard spiritually too on us. And I just I have these experiences all the time when I'm working in spaces of end of life, death, and grief, where I can feel communication and signals coming from the spirit I'm working with, or feel the energetic exchange with the people that I'm working with in those spaces. And just teaching other people how to recognize those things, and recognize those moments and use them to be best of service to the people that they're working with. So that's kind of what that's all about. And yeah, lots of that, lots of experiences with that, which is why I'm doing this.
Very cool. Is there one that sticks out more than others, or that you want to share, or no?
Okay, so I'll give an example without being too specific. If I am curating a memorial space, right, for a funeral, sometimes after, I always ask permission. There's a lot of consent involved in all of this work. So, I always ask permission for them to help me create something meaningful that will bring comfort to their family and that will best honor them. And the way that that comes back to me is sometimes I'm putting something together and I'll think to myself, what's the best kind of flowers to use in this situation? And then all of a sudden, orange roses pops into my mind, and it's like I didn't even have time to finish the thought, And so I'll get orange roses, and then the family will come and they'll go, "Oh my gosh, how did you know so and so loved orange roses?" And I'm like, just had a feeling, because it's like you can't really have you don't not everybody wants to have those kind of conversations. Some people really do, but they have to tell you first. They have to give you permission first.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an example of how those things come through.
Yeah. No, it's an area. Yeah, I had a card reader tell me I was intuitive many years ago. It was about 6 years ago, I think, during a reading, and um I kind of, yeah, you put it off, and I was more interested in the reading. I was like, right, let's go. What's my future hold? But it is interesting. I have noticed most of the time I will, when I'm working with a family, there will be some sign I get, whether it's a ladybird or ladybug, as you guys say, a ladybird, and the person loved ladybirds, and the ladybird will suddenly show up in my apartment when I've never, I haven't seen one in 10 years. Or I'll see the person's name, or I'll hear the person's name in a song and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely something I think is out there, but I don't think everybody's intuitive. I think more people tap into it, than others. And yeah, it's something I'd be interested in exploring. As a celebrant, whenever I choose an outfit the morning of a service, I kind of allow my intuition to guide me to the outfit. It's funny. Yeah, it's interesting. Well,
That's
yeah, we wish you the best of luck with that course, and we'll share all the details. As when once we have this published, we'll share all the details of how people can connect with you, contact you, and any courses that you've got coming up. But in the meantime, we wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for joining us, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.